Can you remind me if the light's on, it's off, or if it's off, it's on?
The light, if the light is on, it's on.
It's on, okay.
Give it a, okay, so we're going to give a few more minutes for Nicole to get here. Because we don't have one, because Tara was our vice chair. It's almost time, yeah, so we might just keep the same vice chair. I think it would be January.
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. Did y'all have a busy day with the voting yesterday? I see. Right. But it didn't affect your offices? Just you had a lot more people in your lobby, right? Is that right? That's good. Yes. Right, so they just, it's hard to tell, right? Busier than you, that's true, all right?
Isabel, can you get us any of those Albany's Against Hate signs? Does the city hall have them to give out, or? Okay. Okay. Oh, here she comes.
Is everybody's mic on?
I think so.
Is your red light on?
No, you should turn your underneath. You could start.
Switch underneath here.
I think it should be on. It's not on? The red light was not on.
Okay, okay. It's approximately 7:30, November 7th, 2018. I'm calling the SEJC meeting to order. Isabel, could you please take the roll?
Commissioner Darrow? Here. Commissioner Downs?
Here?
Commissioner Grossman?
Here.
Commissioner Marks? Here. And Chair Dia.
Here. Okay, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, if you were here at the meeting, please vote. All those who approve the minutes, say aye.
There's you need a motion.
Need a
I
motion.
move to approve the minutes.
Oh, okay, I second it. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Who's making the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Margie.
And seconded by,
I second.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't here.
Okay. Okay, now is the time for public comment. So if you have anything to comment on that's not on the agenda. So this is something that we are not going to cover on the agenda tonight. If you have anything, please come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
This isn't specifically on the agenda, so it's sort of related, tangential, I guess, so I don't know if it counts or not. So I didn't realize that until later, too. I mean, not the agenda. So my comment, if I can get my phone to go back to upright. There, okay. I suggested this also at the city council meeting this week, and so I have two suggestions. One is that you, I don't know if you've ever been to a presentation in Canada, but in Canada, they start public meetings by acknowledging the native peoples whose lands you're on, and it's a really cool tradition, and there's actually a website that is called Native Arts and Cultures Foundation. I can send you all the link to it, but they are trying to get people in the U.S. and all across the United States, meetings are starting to be started like that. So they basically say, we encourage Native peoples and non-Native allies to share and commit to the practice of honor the land. And so you would just start out like your meetings and say, we just want to acknowledge that this is the land that was belonged to the Ohlone people. And that's all you would have to say. But it kind of sparks people's interest, in terms of like, whoa, I didn't even think of that. And then also it's really respectful considering what happened to the Ohlone people, that the Spaniards came in and basically wiped them out and took over and started dividing up the land so that now you have a house. So that's my first thing. And then the second part, it may fit in with your work plan, so I'm not really sure. But at the beginning of the city council meetings, they start out by saying, we, the members of the Albany City Council, like to affirm that we welcome and value, and they have a list of people of sort of things that are related to that. So they say, regardless of where they are from, who they love, how they worship, how they look, their abilities, or how they vote. And so several months ago, and then again this week, I suggested that they add housing status and socioeconomic status. And both times I've been told, Peggy McQuaid has been very nice and emailed me afterwards and told me that they have some sort of retreat that happens early next year and that they will then talk about it. But I feel like, no, don't wait. I mean, how hard could this be? Or maybe, so I was thinking maybe you could put it on your agenda that as a recommendation, have a discussion, bring in people who would like, I'm forgetting people, in terms of what we would recommend that the city council include in their diversity and inclusion statement. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No, we're not taking, do you have something separate? You have separate public comment? Because we're not having a discussion now.
I have something off agenda.
It's not on the agenda?
No.
Okay, please come up. We can't have a discussion on what was just
No, I'm not discussing that.
Okay.
I just want to make a suggestion. Some of us don't have internet access to read these reports online, and if the building could be made available to open earlier so we would have time to come in and read them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good idea. Thanks. Okay. Okay. Now we have an opportunity for the staff or the commissioners to make any announcements. Isabel, did you have any announcements?
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I attended the rent review workshop. Marjorie Roca from ECHO ran it, and she did a great job. There was a really good turnout, and so it's in effect right now.
Oh, okay, great.
Ask a question of Isabel?
What?
I was just wondering, in terms of the hiring of the resource person, where are we at with that?
It's in progress. We're close.
Okay,
We hope to have somebody on board in the next few weeks.
great, thank you.
Okay, now we are very lucky to have Laura Peck, who is the Vice President of the Ashby Village Board, to give us a little bit of background on Ashby Village, some of the history, current programs, and their vision for the future. So would you please join us on the podium?
So I somehow envisioned we'd be in a room around a table. So I don't have
That would be
PowerPoint,
good.
But I'm going to share with you some background about the village. And try to keep it brief so that I can be more responsive to the questions. And I brought some materials with an understanding that depending how the conversation goes, I'm happy to send you other materials or links that would be pertinent to your interest. And my understanding is that you're looking to the issue of aging in place, and certainly the village, our village, and the village movement represents a really important social innovation in that arena. So I wanted to share with you tonight about it. So Ashby Village is a community of older adults, generally 55 and older, who want to remain independent, who want to remain a vibrant part of their community, and who want to stay in their own homes, or at least age in their own communities. And the first village was formed in Boston in Beacon Hill, so that was way back in the early 2000s. Since then, it's really taken fire as a movement. There are over 200 villages across the country, and another 100 in formation in other countries they're forming. There's a village-to-village network that has an annual conference and supports emerging villages. And then newly formed within the last 12 months is a California called Movement California, which is a network of villages throughout California, which has, without surprise, one of the largest collection of villages in the country. So there's one in San Francisco, there's one in Marin, there's one in San Mateo, there's two in Alameda County. So we are not a retirement community. There's no there. Usually when you think about village, like urban village, there's a zip code and a place and an address. And while we have an office and we're co-located now in a church up off Calusa, which we're able to use some of the large spaces, and we have a small amount of office space. But it's not a home or an organization that has, we try to use the resources of the community. And we cover now, we have about 385 members now. Our growth goal immediately is pushing toward 400. We have an executive director and 3 paid staff. We have a cohort of over 315 volunteers who we have trained. So there's an excellent half-day training that everyone goes through, and they're vetted. And of those 310 active volunteers, maybe 40% of them are also members. So there really are different ways to be part of Ashby Village, and one is as a volunteer, where you are trained and you interact with the members. There's many ways to be a volunteer, whether it's working in the office or assisting with programs or providing leadership for different committees, or or there's a whole area of social support providing direct service to members. And the volunteers are an integral part of the community. So they're welcome to go, then invited and included in activities and events. So for folks who might not be sure they want to join the village, who might not be economically able to join the village, it's a way to participate. So one of the core principles is reciprocity. So the notion is we're not a social service agency. We're a network of neighbors who have resources and assets to share. And in many ways, the Ashby Village is about mobilizing the social capital in the area. So there are folks who have many skills. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, I'm convinced that we could have a whole bookshelf just of our Pulitzer, are published authors from UC Berkeley. I mean, the caliber of people in the village is pretty amazing. And it's a very dynamic community, so we opened our doors in 2010, and we had been in formation for a couple years. And we've grown very rapidly. We're probably one of the largest and most dynamic villages in the country, certainly in the state. And what it offers members is practical support, social and emotional support, health and wellness, access to vetted referrals. So we have, for instance, we maintain a list of vendors that members can call and get referrals. In order to be on that list, a member had to recommend you. You were vetted, and then we follow up with every service request. So we make sure that the credibility of the village is behind that. So it's always volunteers first. Nicole, if you call and you broke your leg and you can't walk your dog for 2 weeks, a volunteer will come and work that out with you. We actually we can reach out to our volunteers on an app. So every morning we send out the word of what we need. Drivers is our most often requested service. But companionship, MedPal support to go to doctor's appointments with you, changing a light bulb, computer support, almost anything a member can think that, yeah, maybe they could ask their neighbor, maybe they could ask their kids, but they don't want to burn them out and there's help they need. You can make a call and we'll try to find a way to accommodate you. So you can call for vendors. You can participate in a variety of health and wellness activities, from nature walks to Tai Chi classes, mindfulness, yoga, strength and fitness, and neighbors also, people also organize their own interest groups. So there's a group of folks who have self-organized around modern poetry or science or whatever your interests are. You can use the network and the newsletter to find people of like interests, and that'll be supported by staff. There are support groups, so for folks who have lost someone, for folks who are facing macular degeneration. There are practical support groups to help you be resourceful with the challenges you're facing as you navigate aging. Social, cultural, and educational events. One of our latest innovations is the Arts and Culture Forum, where we've produced events with Maxine Hong Kingston, who's a published author and a member of Ashby Village, with Arlie Hochschel, who recently published a book and is a member of Ashby Village. So that we take the talent that's in our community, and that becomes a resource for everyone else. So we've done these monthly meetings where open to the neighborhood, where open to the public, where people can come and participate and hear interesting speakers. So as a member, you can call for practical support, you can call for referral, you can participate in the social, cultural, and support activities. And that's, yeah. So those are all different aspects of the village. And we really grow organically. We grow based on what our members say they need and what people are ready to step up to help create. So while we are on the more, the cost is on the higher end of some of villages, because we've made a determination that the way to best mobilize and fully mobilize volunteers is to have a core of paid staff, professional staff who can be consistent and kind of the backbone of the organization. So Ashby Village has also now branched out so that We're working with the city of Berkeley, with UC Berkeley, with the Village Movement, and nationally around aging in place and age-friendly initiatives. So we've taken advocacy around policy to create age-friendly environments as part of the work that we do. In terms of ways for, well, so let me stop there, because there's plenty more I could tell you. I have loved being a part of this board. The work that I do in the world is around organizational consulting, and so the last thing I wanted to do was ever be on a board. But in fact, I have loved my service on this board. It's just a really wonderful, dynamic, interesting group of folks who are co-creating something that didn't exist before and figuring it out as we go. And to see the growth and the evolution, it's been a very wonderful thing. And it is largely, although we're nonpartisan, it's certainly Berkeley-centric in some ways, or at least in the ethos of social and political justice. So there's a sense about that and about what it means to be a neighbor and what it means to contribute to your community.
Okay, so we'll take questions from the commission first, and then we'll take questions from the
Great.
public. Margie.
Oh, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Well, I have several questions.
Good.
So when you talk, so how much does it cost to join?
So membership per year is $750 for one person, $1,300 for a household. While that is very high, I've talked to you about the business model. On the one hand, that allows, you could easily just buy rides and computer support and handyman, you could get your value out of that. It also provides social support that you might have to go to professionals for, and it also decreases isolation, because as one of my favorite board members, who's 88, said, at our age, you start losing friends, so it's nice to be making them. Now, we also have a very rich culture of giving, so we have raised a lot of money. About 60% of our business model is funded by fees, and the other 40% we raise through foundations, through overhead, as we've done strategic partnerships and housed some of the initiatives. And we have something called It Takes a Village fund, which is targeted money that goes into subsidizing memberships.
Okay. And when you talked about the health and wellness, so is there any, like, I'm thinking of the health aspect of it. If somebody needs someone to come and cut their toenails, for example, is that like a service, like something that?
Anything that crosses the line of home care needs a licensed professional. So you can't, that you couldn't do, but you could walk someone's dog. You could sit with someone while their loved one is in surgery. You could go shopping for groceries. I mean, you could take somebody shopping for groceries. So there's many ways it's practical social support, but not things that either are consistent, like you need it every day for the rest of your life, as opposed to episodically to get you through a tough time.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
And do you see yourselves just limited to Berkeley?
Oh, no, we're not just in Berkeley. I'm sorry. So the geographic area right now that we encompass is Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, Kensington, El Cerrito, parts of Oakland, parts of the Richmond Annex, and some other bordering towns. The limit is our ability, if someone joins, we have to be able to keep our service promise, which is when you call, we'll get you a volunteer. Volunteers are not always willing to travel, so we want to be able to. So one of the things that has happened is that like a group of people joined from Emeryville. So it ends up a little bit of a hub and spoke model where they can provide support and do a lot of things themselves, and we're experimenting with a group in Richmond to see if they can come in with a cohort of people who will do volunteer work. Then that means that we could experiment with expanding our geographic area.
Thank you.
Nicole?
You answered my question. I was going to ask where your members live, but
Members and volunteers pretty much live in that area. Now, while members are obviously over 55, and we have a whole group of amazing elders who, like, every year we have a party for just the 90 and above, you know. But our volunteers are multi-gen. So we had a volunteer training I attended Saturday, and we had 21 folks who had come, and they were diverse in every way you could imagine. It was really wonderful to see.
I have a couple of questions. Just in following up on that question of subsidized memberships, what does that amount to? What do you provide?
I'm not, you know, each case, there's a formula for who's, and not what's the word, who qualifies. So there's an income qualification that works with folks. So, and sometimes we've used it to subsidize folks whose status changes, who are members and who have become part of that community. So, but we when we do our fundraising, that is dedicated money that goes into build, and to my knowledge, we've never exhausted it in any given year. So,
And do you know if you have any members in Albany?
how many members now?
Do you have any now in Albany?
I'm sorry, yes?
I'm just wondering how many, do you have members currently that live in Albany?
Oh, I could get you that information really easily.
Just curious
I think,
to know, yeah.
you know, less than 20, but a substantial number. I can think of 4 or 5 who are.
Oh, so that you do, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I live 2 blocks away.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yeah.
great.
One of the ways that we grow is we sponsor, we call them living room chats. So someone in a neighborhood will invite their friends and family in addition to the backlog of folks who have said they're interested. So one has an opportunity to come to sit in someone's living room for 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon, get a spiel, but also ask questions and get a feel for who's there and just
Yeah.
kind of test it out.
Yeah, good. In terms of advocacy, what kinds of issues have you supported?
You know, I'm not doing all of the strategic partnership work, but there is a group working with City of Berkeley on an age-friendly continuum. So looking at how there would be a continuum of services, and that's supported by the mayor's office. And we've worked with the UC retirement group to look at both retirement readiness, transition support, and there's a really interesting initiative that UC Berkeley is doing now where they're trying to match UC students with folks, older folks, who have room in their homes, and to try to set it up so it's a win-win solution for everyone, because the housing is so expensive and so constrained. So that's an example of something that, I don't know, it's not our work, but, you know, we're working with them to encourage our members. And then also we've done a piece with CIL around facing mortality, so looking at preparation for that and friendly wills. So the notion is both, how do you navigate and how do you individually and socially navigate the predictable challenges of aging? And then how do you advocate for community solutions that allow people to stay vibrant and contributing members? So we see older people as assets.
Do you have, I'd be interested if you have any kind of list or any kind of information about sort of what really constitutes an aging-friendly community.
Oh, yeah. So the UN has that, the city of New York. I mean, I was wondering about that, and I'd be happy to put together a little bibliography for you.
That would be great.
Because there are folks in New York, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was World Health Organization and New York City. At least those two levels have, done research and have models and frameworks, here are the 8 variables, and here are things you can do for citizens. So absolutely, I'll get that to you.
That's great, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, and also connecting with City of Berkeley.
And one of the sites that was forwarded to you by Isabel ARP has created an index. So you can look on that. And they have actually evaluated Albany, scored Albany for livability. And by the way, we got a 61. So,
Is that good or terrible?
well, 100 is the best, so.
Barely passing.
Did you have any questions?
No, they've been asked, thank you.
Okay, all right, the public, anybody from the public have some questions? Why don't you go ahead and take the podium for a second and ask your question?
It's not really, when you send the information to Bart, is there a way that Bart can put it
I'll
out?
just send it to you.
Okay.
Great. And I left with Isabel. So she has both a postcard just that has our contact information on the back, and she has a pamphlet that has information about it. And I will send you, but 2 things. One is a link to the website, which will show you the calendar and all the information you could possibly want. 2, I will send you the age-friendly links. 3, and I don't know if or how best to share that through you, but there is a living room chat coming up November 18th if people were interested in knowing more or just coming to connect more with our organization, and I'll leave that with Isabel. And timing is everything. So this Sunday, we're having an open house. So the idea is to build the visibility of the village and invite folks in. So we're expecting over 100 folks from the community to come and visit, and various activities that we represent will be tabled, and there'll be food. We know how to throw a party. And,
So what's the time and place?
I'm going to leave this with you, and I left a few on the
okay,
thing.
it'll
So
be
it's
on there.
November 10th, this coming Sunday, 2 to 4, 1821 Catalina Avenue. So it's right around the corner from Pete's, down the street from Wells Fargo.
Okay.
And it's a really nice, it's a nice space, and I can promise you it'll be a lovely afternoon. And it's a nice way to learn more about Ashby Village. And please I left a few out there, and please let people you know who you think might be interested in the village. We're not for everyone. We are really a dynamic group of folks who want people who want to be active and participate in creating the organization. So. And then as they pay in, it's a lot easier to ask for help.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. So, next item on the agenda is the election of a vice chair. We haven't had a vice chair for a few months now since Tara left. So, does anybody want to make a motion, or is it okay if we just jump right into it? And would somebody like to make nominate somebody as vice chair? Or
Is
nominate
there anybody
themselves?
that wants to be vice chair?
Craig? Nicole, it's you guys' turn.
We've sort of had a tradition
right,
of the next person up is,
So that would be you, Nicole.
That's fine,
Okay,
if I
vice chair.
get the motion.
So, all right,
Do you need
I move to make Nicole the vice chair.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So after that, we're going to talk about aging in place, which is consistent with our speaker. And we wanted to talk a little bit about, the breadth and width of our effort and the subcommittee composition. And, my inclination is not to take too much on at first, but just kind of maybe map out a few initial steps and create, a brief plan, and then kind of flush those out as we move ahead. So anybody got any thoughts about that?
I'm very curious to see the material that we get in terms of what are some of the things that are required for an aging-friendly community. I mean, and I think some of them are very practical things, like signage that people can read, especially in the dark. And also, I've been noticing I can still manage to hoof it across San Pablo Avenue, but it's not easy for people, and certainly people who are disabled at all. The lights are just way too short. So things like that, I would like to see, that the city really can do.
Right. Well, did you get a chance to look at the material in the websites that was made?
No, I haven't done that, so,
Okay. So there's two things. Basically, there's a Wikipedia, Aging in Place, and, I like Wikipedia because it's kind of, it's neutral. And they talked about the fact that most adults would prefer to age in place and remain in their house as long as possible. But some things would help to make that more possible, and that's like home modifications. And there's things like putting up railings, on your stairs, in the bathtub, other types of things to do to keep you from falling. They said that the greatest threat to an ability to age in place is falling. And another thing is to clear out clutter and wires and slippery rugs, things like that. My daughter's actually an OT, and this is what she does a lot. She goes into people's homes and does an assessment for them, and that, they're a great resource. They will go through, check out the house, and just look and see all of the different barriers to somebody that is becoming less agile or has their balance is starting to go, their sight's going, and tell them, this is what you need to do to make your home more livable. And then also, the Wikipedia talked about resources in the community. They call them NORCs, naturally occurring retirement communities, and it sounds a lot like what Laura was just talking about, the Ashby Village. And that occurs when a congregation of residents 60 and older, she said 55, live cooperatively. So you don't have to live in the same place, but in the same community. Have a seat, Alan. Have a seat. Then they were also talking about technological changes, and I think we all know as we get older, our phones become more and more befuddling. And so they said that, however, there are some technological changes that you can rely on to make it more easy for you to stay in your home. They talked about some of the reasons why people have more difficulty as they age. Some of them are biological. Motor function goes, fine motor function can go. They also said that cognitive function goes. One out of 5 people over the age of 55 will have some type of mental health disorder. So that may play into whether or not how much time you can really spend by yourself. So that's one of the resources. Then another resource was this ARP index, and I was having a terrible time with my printer, so Margie printed off some material for me, but I also took some notes, and I have the website is in the agenda. If you go on that, you'll see that they actually rated a lot of communities for livability. You put in your zip code. I put in 94706, and there's different ways that they rated the communities based on housing, neighborhood, transportation, environment, health, engagement, and opportunity. And Albany, as I said, got a score of 61 out of a possible 100. And I looked at what our weaknesses are based on this, and housing got the lowest rating, 39, because it's so expensive here. And then they also, in addition to giving overall rating for the community and giving an overall rating for the element, then they broke it down like a housing, one of the highest, or the lowest problem rating that we got in housing was affordability and the cost burden. And that's something that we talked a lot about when we did rent review, and we said, okay, people's housing cost is over 30%, which is considered high by HUD, by Housing and Urban Development. Here they said 26, that's pretty close to 30. This is probably done some time ago. But they said, that is one of the factors that makes it difficult for seniors to stay in their homes in Albany. And another factor that they talked about was the environment. Specifically, we rated really low on air quality, having to do with exposure from pollutants from the roadway and from industry. And although we don't really have a lot of industry in Albany, we are definitely, there's quite a bit of industry in Berkeley and Oakland, all along around the bay. And, we have the freeway very close to us as well. And then the other area that I was kind of surprised that we rated relatively low in, and that was an engagement. And though we have a lot of opportunity for engagement, the actual participation is somewhat low. And a lot of the opportunity was with resources from the university. And they didn't specifically say that, but they said those types of resources. So we do have guidelines right here specific to Albany about some of the things that we could do to make it more livable from the ARP index. And in addition, I thought those were really great examples of what to do with your home and the kinds of experts that you would want to have to come into the home, occupational therapist. And so right now, we don't have an occupational therapist working out of the senior center, but that might be something that we would want to take very seriously if we're going to focus on aging in place. So does anybody please comment, questions? Or anybody have any questions?
Well, I don't have a question, I have a comment. I think, you and I are on this subcommittee, but the breadth of this is so large,
Right.
and it's going to be a lot of work. And I think, so we need to focus in on maybe a few small areas to start out with. One of the things when we met with Robin, who's I think the interim head of the senior center, her main issue, or what she really, a concern that she had was seniors that live in Albany that are isolated, that don't have contact with anybody, and trying to reach those seniors. And so I think that might be a place where we can start. There's we can do some other things at the same time, but we're going to need some help, you and I, to get this thing going and off the ground. And the World Health Organization and ARP, they both have those 8 standards of livability, and which sounds like the same thing on Wikipedia. So they do have it broken down by categories, and that's helpful, but it's like there's just so much to do.
Yeah, and I think that fits, what you're talking about fits with this engagement item. So I agree with you that that would be a good place to start, and that it would be good if we could keep working with Sid and,
Robin.
Robin, at the senior center. And maybe then the next step would be then after we identify those people, and we can talk with them and see what their take is on what they need, and then maybe go from there. So maybe that's just our first two steps, and then we can flesh it out more.
You know, what I'm thinking as I listen to you talk about this is that it's always an issue with a commission, sort of where we cross the line from making policy recommendations to beginning to do service, which is really not our purview, and the problem is we can't sustain anything, really. And one of the nice things about this issue is we have a senior center, and there are staff there. So if there's a concern about people who are isolated and disengaged, that maybe we ought to be talking to the staff at the senior center to, in terms of initiating some kind of an outreach program.
Yeah, we did. And Robin thought that she would probably be the person to take the initiative to do the outreach. In addition, Sid is working to identify isolated individuals for emergency services.
Yeah. So we could, try to monitor that and help them to move along and see if they need help finding resources or whatever. But some of the other things that strike me, are things that the city can do, that are concrete steps. For example, doing something about the street crossing, doing something about the signage, doing something about broken sidewalks, that make it hazardous for older people. Issues like that where it requires a very concrete step that we can recommend are probably the quickest things we can do. And also, I'm thinking about we have signs up in the community that talk about it being friendly to all kinds of people, but it isn't necessarily friendly to elderly people. And maybe we need to do something to heighten awareness in the community of this population and what their needs are, and to communicate to people who want to remain in place that the city wants them there and supports that. If indeed it does. So that's a little bit off the top of my head, but I'm suggesting we maybe begin in some more concrete ways and ask the staff at the senior center to do the outreach work and things of that sort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can't do that.
That's what we're talking about doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Greg?
No, I'm just, can I just get some background? How long has our Aging in Place subcommittee been in place?
A couple of months.
2 months.
2 months, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And it shares a name with things like the Ashby Village movement, but ours is really a kind of holistic, what's it like to be aging in Albany? Whether or not someone's part of a
We want
community.
to specifically reach out and identify the people who want to be identified as somewhat isolated. And you can be isolated by choice, but a lot of times the seniors are not isolated by choice, but like they can't go out because they can't walk around. It's not walkable enough, or they don't have the transportation, or they are not aware of the resources.
Or they can't drive anymore.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
If I may say a few things about the work plan. The work plan specifically mentions to investigate service gaps for seniors to age in place. So I think the role of the commission, as Barb said, is to identify those gaps and make recommendations to the council on how to fill them, or potential recommendations on how to fill them. That's probably more the purview that falls under the commission, as mentioned in the work plan.
I think that's where we're going now, but this is like the track that we're taking by helping Sid and Robin identify the isolated folks, and then the next step is then we say, okay, how can we help you? And then that would be our way of identifying the gaps.
It's also the case that not everybody who needs help is isolated. You know, I mean, there are people who may be well connected, but maybe maybe have financial problems. So and people are often uncomfortable sharing those kinds of issues.
I would say isolation is a gap. You know, it's something that needs to be addressed, but it's not the only gap, and it's not necessarily isolation will lead to finding new gaps or other gaps. It will, but it's not the only route.
Yeah, but that was something that I believe Robin and Sid were really wanting to look into, because they had this sense that a lot of the people who were not isolated were actually making it to the senior center. So they want to find the people who are not making it to the senior center. But that doesn't mean that we don't ask the people who at the senior center what else is it that they might need. And having read this material from Wikipedia, I think an OT, if they could bring in an OT occasionally to make assessments in homes if people desire that, would be a really great resource. And that's something that we hadn't thought of before. We were thinking along the lines of podiatrists and nurses. So, anybody else? Okay. So, okay, what I'm getting right now is that we would work with the senior center staff and Sid to support them in identifying isolated seniors, and also identify means to learn what other needs that other seniors who are less isolated, who are more integrated into the community need. And that would be basically our goal for this effort. And there may be other things that would come off of that. So we're ready to go to the public? Anybody from the public like to weigh in?
I think this is great that you're doing this, and I think it's one of the biggest challenges in any, like libraries. You know, I come from a library background. It's extremely difficult to find the people that you're not reaching because you're not reaching them. So I really applaud you for trying to do that and working with the Senior Center in trying to do that. And I just had a couple thoughts. In Canada, there was something called the Working Together Project, and it was libraries working together. It was like a several-year project where they were trying to find the people that they weren't serving, and how did they, and what were those people's needs, and why weren't they being served by the library? So they might be a good model. You might want to just look. It's called the Working Together Project in Canada. And then I also was thinking about other groups that work with seniors, and maybe the people who you're trying to reach don't do this, but the YMCA I know has seniors that come there, and they also might have some insights. So I was just trying to, and then it seems, I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot of potential for really personal interactions with people, trying to say, do you know someone? You know, it's going to be that kind of thing, and not something that is a flyer or you put on your website or whatever. So
that's something we'll need to talk with Sid and Robin about.
yeah, I'm just, if you could pass those on, that's
Yeah.
what I was saying. Thank you.
Anybody else? Alan?
Alan Ayers, Albany resident, aging in place.
Me too.
I think our senior center does a really great job right now. It doesn't hurt to have a look at them and offer suggestions, but Julie mentioned the library. The library at one time had a books on wheels. You'd take a book out and take it to an elderly person and come back and discuss the book. You both read it, and there's an opportunity to draw people out as well and more into the community. That senior center is so busy almost all of the time. They're doing a lot. There's Meals on Wheels and whatever else. All the classes that are for seniors, there's
Meals provided.
slow yoga or whatever it's called. There's also a group that's been around for a long time. I participated with Rebuilding Together. It used to be called Christmas in April. And they do a lot of work to rehabilitate disabled people's and elderly people's homes. They put in stairways and they put in lights and smoke detectors. And the last time I did something with them, they were having trouble getting people to come up with projects in Albany. So,
Is that because they couldn't find them or there weren't any?
I think there were some.
Yeah, I think there are.
There are.
Well, I can see.
And it's difficult to try to reach out to somebody that is reluctant to be visited.
Yeah.
I remember seeing an old Seinfeld cartoon where this old guy was being visited by the Steinfeld group, and he said, "What the hell are you doing here? Get out of here." So some of them just want to be left alone, rest, reflect, so you have to be really careful. So anyway, I think it's great you're doing this, but be cautious and be aware of what we're already doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You know, in light of what Alan said, one of the things I have been concerned, I mentioned this once before, but I want to add it to this issue, is I think the senior center is great. I am concerned about whether they have adequate capacity. And you know, if we're talking about them doing more, maybe they need more resources.
Okay,
And that's something that we could definitely recommend to council.
okay.
And by capacity, you don't just mean physical space, but staffing, stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember there was some discussion about various activities, for example, that exist, but they're generally fully subscribed. So if, for example, we were to identify more people and get them to come to the senior center, it would, you know, create a problem.
And to piggyback on what Bart just said, the commission makes recommendations to the city council. So your work plan is to identify gaps in services for seniors in Albany, but the report is to the city council. So you may use the senior center staff and services and resources that they can provide to give you some information, but that information should be used as to provide a report to council.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that we got our task ahead of us. So I think our next step then will be to plan a second meeting, follow-up meeting with Sid and Robin, and then we will report back to you. Okay.
And ask them what their needs are, you know, and how their budget is working, and
That's a good thought.
And specifically what they wish they had that we can ask the council to provide, whether it's like a specific type of personnel, like an occupational therapist, or someone to go door to door, knock on every door in Albany and locate the.
Well, they need a podiatrist. They had a podiatrist that was coming, and that person is no longer coming. So that's a huge need that they have at the senior center. I'm trying to work with the nurses to get some nurse volunteers to go over there.
Okay.
But that's their probably their biggest need right now.
but sometimes people get used to a particular, you know, set of constraints, and it doesn't occur to them that maybe they could have more than that. So.
Right, I know, but that's really a huge.
Yeah,
That
I
could also be
understand,
like
but,
their
yeah.
wish list. is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I also think there may be some people, and I don't have these expertise myself, but I do walk my dog every day, and I know which houses have isolated seniors in them because I see them occasionally, the houses are often in disrepair, and my offers to help with just like some basic things have been rebuffed because I'm just some weird stranger. But I think the folks at the senior center or social workers would have the specific skills to get people to open up a little more to help. And hopefully that's something we can help resource for them.
We could, the senior center could play some of the kinds of roles that the village plays.
Yeah.
And while the village is great, it's awfully expensive for people.
And it is anticipated that the neighborhood services coordinator who's coming on board will provide services to seniors.
Great.
So that beyond what the senior center can provide. So light touch case management and referrals and assistance for services.
Great.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is inclusivity, and I just mostly wanted to know if the letter was transmitted to the council, if there was any feedback.
Nick Pilch mentioned to me that he had received the letter, and he said it was on the agenda in December, which sort of perplexed me because I didn't exactly know that it was going to be an agenda item. Did you know anything about that?
Yeah, I think that the way that the inclusivity topic will be addressed by the council will either be in two of the following ways. As part of their review of advisory bodies, which should be coming soon, maybe that's what he was talking about, and then also as part of the strategic plan, which the council will work on at the beginning of the year of 2019. So both ways could probably add clarification to the topic and provide some future direction to the commission on that. So, but we don't have a clear path right now. There's no clear.
So, I mean, we did write this letter. What normally happens? I mean, I've had that verbal response, but.
It depends. It all depends on the council's interest, council's agenda, the load, what's going on in the city, in other matters. There's no specific path or direction.
But we have written them a letter, and
Yes.
and when you write somebody a letter, you expect to get a response.
Well, yes, but it sounds like you got the response from one.
Yeah, but it was
council
it was,
member.
it was very cursory. So
Yeah. So that's what I think will happen is the topic of inclusivity, will be addressed by the council in either or both of the ways that I just mentioned, and I'll let you know when that occurs. Yeah, but I don't have a specific timeline or date yet.
Anybody on the commission?
And we might never get because we did ask a specific concrete question, right? Would they, would they authorize a survey as a starting point? And there's not a necessary mechanism in which we might get a yes or no on that.
Not outside of a council meeting,
Right.
so it has to be addressed by the council at a public meeting.
Right.
So, as I said, it could be addressed as part of their review of advisory bodies or as part of their strategic plan conversation,
Okay.
which both items will happen in the next few months. So, and I will let you know when I know.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public have any comments on inclusivity?
Is that like the total discussion you're going to have on it? That was it?
Inclusivity, we presented a letter to the city council. And it was in the package last time.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought there was going to be like an inclusivity conversation, but you're just talking about the letter.
Just getting caught, yeah.
Just getting caught up. Okay. I just wanted to say that I really support, if, city council ever responds to you, I support doing the survey, and again, I think it'll be extremely difficult, and I think it'll take a lot of discussion and a lot of reaching out in a lot of different ways, and I hope that's what happens, because in general in Albany, my experience has been that they say that there's been participation, and it turns out it was something posted on the website, and that was it. And so I think, and I would love, if there was any way I could be involved in that, I would love to be a part of that, because that's something I'm really committed to, is the people in Albany really feeling like somebody actually reached out to them individually and said, we need to know what you think. And so I think it'll take a lot of people and a lot of work to be able to do that. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any more comments from the commission? Okay.
I think we're in a holding pattern at the moment. I hope we're not holding too long.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next item then. We wanted to add something to our work plan, which would be a full evaluation of the Albany Project Hope. And before you do that, you have to fill out this form. So I drafted something for everybody to look at. So could you pass that out? And I wanted to get feedback. Okay, we need one more for Isabel. Because, it involves, well, we don't know if it's going to involve, but, the proposed amendment, that's like about the fourth line, to the work plan is to create a full evaluation of Project Hope and provide any recommendations arising from the evaluation. I feel that's pretty straightforward. But the next question is, will this amendment add to the advisory body's overall workload? And yes, it will. And so they want to know, how will the extra workload be managed?
Could I suggest one point we could make here is that many of the items on our work plan have been completed.
Yeah, so that will be,
Yeah.
how will the extra workload be managed? Okay. Okay, so I'll add that. Many of the items on workload, our work plan have been completed. And also I said the extra workload can be managed through an extended time frame, and the project will incorporate projects already developed toward the effort. The workload will be addressed through a commission work group. I don't think we've really decided who's going to be on that, but then I said I proposed the time frame for completion to be September 2020. Anybody think that's too long, too short?
Well, when is the contract
long.
up for renewal?
At the end of the fiscal year, so June 30th, 2019 is when the current contract ends, and a new contract would start July 1st. So the contract would go to council in June.
Yeah.
This coming June? Mm-hmm. So we'd actually want to do something before that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's
Yeah.
not much point.
Okay, so we should probably maybe have something by April?
Yeah.
April 2019.
Yeah,
April, yeah.
Okay.
To present to council.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe I will, then I'll take this off about the extended time frame. Since,
So that's that extended.
yeah, no, yeah, but since we've added that many of the items on our work plan have already been completed, that will compensate for that. Okay, and then it next says, explain how the amendment is in line with the advisory body's role as defined by the city council. The proposal is consistent with the purpose of the SEJC to research, analyze, discuss, and evaluate a broad range of data and opinions on social and environmental issues affecting the welfare of the residents of Albany, and to make recommendations to the City Council on positions and/or actions to address these issues. I think it's a perfect fit.
The other thing I was thinking about this is we already review their monthly reports, and we've had comments from the public about, about the performance. So we're sort of already positioned
Right.
where we're engaged in some form of evaluation, which
Right.
we found to be inadequate. So
Yeah. That's what I was saying, that we've already, the project will incorporate products already developed toward the effort. That's part of how we're going to manage it. But I think the sticking point for us was how do we get the data? It says, please provide pro-con analysis regarding the proposed amendment. And I said the con is some data may be difficult to obtain. So we have to reach the clients that they've been working with. And we have very little data from.
but they
clients.
do.
But they do. So they have feedback from the clients, is that true, Isabel?
I don't have I don't know what they have. Like, I don't know what they collect as far as client feedback. I know the files are confidential, but I think what spurred this is that you felt like BFHP did not do client feedback surveys.
Right.
So they probably.
Well, I think we can work with the Resource Center. I know that they hired a new person. Well, I don't know how new she is, but she's been showing up to the showers every single week and interacting with the homeless there and doing a really great job. And the people like her. I see her having them fill out applications. She's interacting with them. I understand she's going to the Resource Center. So they've really upped their game in Albany. I could say that with this new person. I mean, I hate to say it's just dependent upon who the person is, but maybe that's what it is.
A lot of life is like that.
Right. So
So you might,
I think so. We could work with the Resource Center too to get information.
okay, all right. So we start there. Okay. So I can put that up where, how will the extra workload be managed?
Right.
So partially through the Resource Center. As a source of data and feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can I make just one? So I think this is very good. Thank you for doing it. The one piece I might add is I feel like we might need either a sentence or a phrase under explain how it's in line. It seems so self-evidently in line that when you state our mission, but we still do leave it to them to connect the mission to this and to say, because, even something like an introductory, clause, because this would evaluate a particularly needy or, vulnerable section of the population. This would, fulfill our mission.
Okay.
Just to sort of replace the proposal is consistent with something that gives them a link.
I agree.
This will-
And as I said before, I do think the fact that it's already on our work plan, sort of, partway, it makes it absolutely appropriate for us to say we need more information than that.
Because this will support a very vulnerable part of our community's population.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. And that would be under explain how this amendment is in line.
Exactly.
Okay. So I said, though, the pros, the project will clarify the efforts taken to reach and support the homeless and how effective these efforts are. Using input from the client's own experiences, the city will have information on which to base the value of their investment in Project Hope.
That's good.
Okay, so I will finalize this, and is it okay if I just turn it in, or do you want to see it before?
I think,
Okay.
can we move to approve it with the amendments discussed just now, and then you can just make those changes? So, okay, I so move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor? Okay. Oh, do you know what? I didn't throw it to the public.
No.
Okay, sorry. I'm getting better at this, but please come up if you have anything. Okay.
I'm very happy that you guys are wanting to put this on your workload and keep it there. The work plan, we deserve this. We deserve to be taken seriously as a population that is, as you said, very vulnerable. Serving homeless people is paramount, as it is to the public good, to increase the quality of life for the entire community. It's a very vulnerable, complicated population. My experience with BF&H is that last year they were very lacking. I worked with a couple of people there that did not seem to take their job seriously, and they were not very nice people, and they were kind of condescending and rude, and they didn't follow through. This year, a young lady was mentioned, Caitlin. She is 100%. So I'm looking at what happened last year with BF&H and what's happening this year, and I am still skeptical. The proof's in the pudding. If they find me a place to live, then maybe I'll think a little bit better. Caitlin, however, is following through. She does everything she says she's going to do. I feel that Berkeley Food and Housing is and they should be responsible for their staff. What mess-ups happened last year, they should take responsibility for the lives they hurt, for the people they hurt. They didn't do that. However, something has changed. There's other staff people I've met that they're not so good. So I'm feeling that it's as good as the staff people they have, and it's as good as the supervisors and managers make those staff people accountable. I want that this proceed, that we continue to monitor BF&H and check their progress and make sure the people they send out to help us are competent and above that. And I'd also like to see that clients be allowed to review, to provide some feedback that's written, and a mechanism such that the clients can go to the boss at BF&H or someone in Albany, maybe the new coordinator, and say, this isn't working for me, and I want some way to fix this. So my experience last year was really bad. I was traumatized. I was left feeling like I didn't matter. I need to be heard as a person who lives in this city, a citizen and a client. So I'm feeling that BF&H needs to rise to that occasion and be better at what they do, especially since they're dealing with very complicated populations. So I applaud your efforts tonight. I thank you very much, and I hope we can make this better. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anybody else?
I just wanted to welcome Greg, too.
Oh,
It's the
thank you.
first meeting I've been to where you were here. I came because I really, actually, even though I keep getting up and talking, actually came because of 6.4 and 6.5, so this is actually getting to why I'm here. I really appreciate like Leah, I appreciate very much that there's the word full in there, the full evaluation, because I'm really dismayed by the reports, which I will talk about in the next issue, the next item on the agenda. And I can give you names of people, if you're going to be looking for reports, I can give you, I talked to Amber Whitson and asked her, anticipating this conversation, I said, are there people that you would send people to talk to? And she can guide you, and she said it's okay to give her contact information, and she is in touch with a lot of people, and there's a whole community of them, and so I think she would be a great contact in terms of trying to do this. And then I just wanted to mention the CDBG funds, because Isabel, I know that came up at the city council meeting, and they were approved the funds, and then I asked a question. They approved $40,000 or whatever it was to go to Project Hope of the CDBG funds, and I was worried that if it turned out that their contract wasn't renewed, that the funds were already committed, and Isabel said that it's possible to ask for an adjustment in that or to change it, but is there a deadline on that? If they wait till April, is that too late to have a change? And if they decide for some reason not to go, then to recommend against Project Hope, will April be too late?
No, the recommendation was for this fiscal year. Mm-hmm. So what the commission is working on is a recommendation for next fiscal year's contract.
Right, but that'll be renewed on July 1st, right?
Right.
Or before July 1st. And it's not too late in April if they give the recommendation for that. There's not I just didn't want them to find out that, it's too late, we've passed some deadline, but it's okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that we probably are addressing those comments and what we already have.
I have a question. If we get the request for the amendment in soon, can that be decided by the council at the December meeting?
Well, it has to go to a council meeting.
Yeah.
So as soon as I receive it, depending on the timing, we'll put it on the next agenda of the council meeting.
Yeah, I should be able to give it to you.
When is the next meeting?
The next meeting is the second meeting in November, so it's next week.
Okay, so
no, 2 weeks from now.
Okay, so we could get it on that agenda or the following first in.
Whoops, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it all depends on what's currently on the agenda. If there's a big item, then sometimes we push items a little further. Depends on what's current on the agendas, but yeah, reasonably.
It would be great if there's any way to get it approved before our next meeting so we can get started on
Well,
that.
I need to receive it, and we need to get it to the city manager 10 days before the meeting.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think the deadline is this Friday.
Okay. Thank you.
Deadline is this Friday? Okay,
Thank you.
that's 2 days from now. Is that the 9th? So, okay. I had added work plan, commission will discuss additional items for current work plan. But, I checked the minutes, and I forgot that we had postponed this to move it to early 2019. So,
I think there's item 6.5.
did I miss that? The Albany project. Okay, does anybody have any comments on the first quarter report from Albany Project Hope? No comments on it?
No.
Okay. I didn't read the whole thing, I have to admit, but usually it's almost always exactly the same. And then in the back, there's the numbers. And I just noticed that there's a lot of zeros on the second graph, the second chart. On all there's a lot of services regarding transportation, and are all zeros. And the one that I really question is that it says transporting client to showers. at MASC Albany. And I was wondering why that's not happening when we have those showers ongoing.
We do have the showers ongoing. I would say this about the showers. For the first time, we've had to turn people away because we don't have enough time. So I'd like to put that on a future agenda to talk about.
Okay.
But-
So they don't have, the BFHP is not providing people rides to the shower?
No, some shower clients give other shower clients rides to the showers. That happens.
So,
But they were not giving people rides.
so that, I'm concerned about that.
Well, I'm not sure why it's on there, because I don't think it was ever contemplated that they would do that.
It's there.
It was contemplated, and people would if people had transportation, they would come to the showers. But my problem, even if we instituted that at this point, is that we don't have the time to fit them into the showers now.
And the BFHP housing navigator would bring somebody to the showers that if it's requested by the person that they're working with.
Yeah,
But
so,
it's
yeah,
not like we
yeah,
don't have
it's
a
not a
route
service.
or anything.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
no.
Oh, okay.
No.
So that's not like going down.
And it's
like
not a
with
shuttle.
with a shuttle,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. Okay, now I got it. All right, but I'm
It
still,
would be lovely to have that, but it wouldn't be a very good use of a housing navigator.
there's still an awful lot of zeros on transporting people, but quite a few discussions have occurred. But, I don't know, but I think this is, we're going to know more after we do our evaluation. Because I think that's part of what got us interested in that was the fact that these reports didn't seem to really give you a very clear picture of what's going on. Okay, so nobody has any comments on this? All right, so now, as I had started to say.
Public
Oh,
comment.
public, oops, sorry, please. Okay, thanks for reminding me.
I'm concerned about some language that's used in this report. I don't think you guys wrote it, so it's not your fault. One was talking about.
Did you say what page it's on?
Yeah, outreach and referrals. They talked about how they're reacquainted with other individuals who had engaged with us in the past, but with whom we had lost contact. In my condition, my situation, they didn't lose contact with me. They knew very well how to find me, but they didn't. So I felt this particular statement was kind of passing the buck on to us as being the problem. Then we go down to the bottom of page 2, population, avert problematic behavior. That assumes a lot about.
Which,
The bottom of page 2, the last paragraph. So this can be helpful to address the homeless population and avert problematic behavior. This assumes a lot about the assumption that our behaviors are problematic. I mean, I'm pointing these things out because I think they're part of a problem in how that we are viewed. Here on the last page 4, like in the middle there, although the information was given, outreach has found no one in the encampments interested in shelter beds. Many individuals have refused. That language assumes that we're standing there, being pugnacious. Refuse to do something assumes a certain behavior or certain motivation. And then at the bottom paragraph there, some who review shelter service in any capacity. These words were generated by whoever wrote this report, and I'm feeling that's part of the attitude that I experienced last year. Things that were said about me, well, Leah, you're refusing help. That wasn't the case. I was refusing the stuff that was being shoved down my throat, assuming that they knew better what I needed than I did. So when this report is read, I'm hoping that you guys who read it can look at this language in the viewpoint from being a client and how we're treated and how are assumed, certain things are assumed about us and written about in ways that are really negative and insulting. So that's what I had to say about that. And in terms of, as Julie said, we know people who can vouch for this situation. I was kind of holding off on that until I was sure you guys were going to take this on. And now we can start producing those people that can speak to our concerns and give you the information you need to back up my statements. I'm feeling BF&H, they ought to earn our contract, and we should monitor them so that they do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is really why I'm here tonight. So a lot of what Leah said is what I have highlighted, and I actually I have one so I can hand it to you. It's the language, and the language is the tone, and the tone is an attitude. And you could imagine if if you were trying to lose weight or trying to quit cigarettes and somebody said, well, you refused to, I offered you help and I decided how you should do it and you didn't do my program, so you refused it. And that attitude of disrespect and treating people like they don't know best what's for themselves, and if they aren't ready to do something or they want to do it a different way, this attitude is really insulting and disrespectful, and it really concerns me. So I don't know who wrote this. It was a combination, but I think Berkeley Food and Housing Project needs to have somebody tell them this is not okay. Your attitude is not okay. It's not just your language that you need to sort of figure out how to sound like you actually like people, but it's actually it's not okay to feel that way. It's example. Let's see. There was one that or just this whole complaint at the beginning. There was somebody who didn't pay their full rent. This has caused the HN, the housing navigator, to go out to the shared housing unit in Oakland several times, 4, on top of the regular house visits to try to talk with the client as he was not answering his phone or responding to letters. These issues have made it necessary. So it's basically what a hardship for them that this person, something happened in their life where their rent didn't get paid. That would be the way you would really express it. And we were concerned, and so we followed up. But no, it's like, look what it did. It made our lives really impossible. And then the refuse, outreach staff will continue. These individuals are chronically homeless and typically turn down shelters. Leah said that. She and I are just like on the same page. So anyway, I'll stop, but I really think they need a talking to, or maybe you need to consider somebody else. And I know that Amber actually had some suggestions for other possibilities, and the Homeless Task Force, years ago when we had that, we had a suggestion for another agency and not Berkeley Food and Housing, so you could follow up on with us. And here's the highlighted version. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for pointing those.
Yes.
And that's the kind of feedback that I think we can incorporate if the council agrees to amend the work plan to do this evaluation. Those are the kinds of things that we can include in them. And so it's good to hear from you now, and we can solicit from other folks that are affected, that kind of feedback.
Does anybody else have any other comments? Okay.
Can we get copies of that? I don't know how to, well, I'll leave it up to
The highlighted?
how to copy that highlighting.
I think I can pick it out.
I think we got the gist from the
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah, right, yeah. Anybody else want to see this? Okay. Is there anything else before I talk about the next item on the agenda?
As we have this conversation, it occurs to me that one of the things we might build into this evaluation is to do some focus groups, which, I've done that sort of thing. It's not that difficult. But, if we have people who want to speak, it would be very easy to do that.
You mean from the clients?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no barrier to confidentiality if people come and want to say things to us. It's only if we're sharing information that they haven't given us.
Okay. Right, so the very last item, I believe we can postpone. It's adding items to the work plan. And we had, if my minutes are correct from the last time, we had agreed to do that, and then I overlooked that when I was putting together, 6-4 on the minutes from October 3rd. The commission postponed the discussion until early 2019. It's a discussion of potential items to include in the, so is that still okay with everybody?
Yeah, there's no rush, and we're over time anyway.
Yeah, we've got, these other items are kind of filling out now. So we, let's see, Margie and I have been doing the aging in place. And I'm going to, send the form to add this other item, but we need a lead or a work group for the Project Hope evaluation. So,
But you have to wait until council approves the amendment to the work plan, so.
but what if we need to do more work on it beforehand? I think we need people
I don't,
now
what work would we
willing
do
to
on it
leave
beforehand?
it. Albany, Project Hope.
I think we can't do work on it until it's
There's
approved.
going to be anything else except to turn in the form?
And then we get an approval, and then we appoint a group of people
Okay,
to do it.
okay, all right.
But we can, individually think in advance about what we want to do if it's approved, and then,
And you can speak to
Remember-
council at the meeting when the work plan amendment is on the agenda if
Somebody's
you'd
got
like
to
to.
go to the meeting when it's on the agenda, yeah, so I guess that will be me.
can you let us know when it is on the, okay. Then I will try if my work and family permit.
But just keep in mind, Margie and I already have a commitment.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hear you.
All right, I think we're done. Is there anything else?
Nope.
Anybody can think of? Okay. Closing the November 7th meeting, 9:07 PM.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, we didn't get agenda items for the next meeting. That's, what do we want to do in the next meeting? We'll bring you back a report on aging in place. Aging in place, status on inclusivity.
Inclusivity, right.
Status of amendment to work plan. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Isabel, can I have those brochures? I want a copy of the brochure.